'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast. My name is Rich Natoli, and this is a really cool one today. I am joined by two people. One, you know, the illustrious Luke Simons, the Chief Fishing Officer of the company, and Cameron Canner, the Manager of Partnerships. And we're going to talk about a topic that we can't gloss over. It's an important topic, and it's something that has affected Florida over the recent weeks, and it's conservation based. So we're going to talk a little bit about the redfish release. Approximately 30,000 redfish that were released. Salt Strong was involved in this, and we're going to go into the details. So, Luke, welcome. Cameron, welcome to your first podcast. First of many, I'm sure, for Salt Strong. Good to see you guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Rich.
Yeah, and Rich, I'll clarify one thing too. So this does have immediate benefit to Florida, but it also has long-term benefit to all other states that are doing redfish releases as well. This is a very unique release. It's the first of its kind to actually tag fish and have real-time data on what those fish are doing. And so that other areas can use the same data to know like what the best tide is, what the best weather conditions are for release, what the best salinity. Like they're literally taking all those measurements for all these releases and then measuring the survival rate of those redfish to pin it back down to see, okay, what was the best conditions for the release, and then other area they're going to share it, of course, with other people. This isn't going to be like exclusive stuff. They're going to share with these other groups like Duke Energy and a lot of these groups that have redfish releases, so that again we can just maximize the survivability and the overall impact of these releases.
That's incredible. So I didn't realize that. I knew that they were tracked, which to me was amazing that they were going to be tracked when they were released. It's not, I'm a mid-Atlantic guy, so I'm used to the fish releases up here. The only thing you get are trout, right? and when they release them, they get them out of the truck and they just kind of dump them right in the creek. And, the 6,000 fishermen are all lining the creek to pull them out immediately. So it's a little bit different in my experience. So when I was looking at this, I was like, wow, this is something. This is not to feed the fishermen. This is actually something that's going to impact the population, and the research component of it is just amazing. But Luke, why don't you go into a little bit the story behind the redfish release? What's the Salt Strong tie into it? And Cameron, you were there releasing these fish. I saw you on the videos, getting dirty. Up in the mud, getting them into the water. So let's start off, Luke, if you would, with the story behind this release.
Yeah, so the story behind it really started. It was, I guess, a year and a half ago, and we did a release with Motor. We just participated in. So Moat Marine is just a great organization, and they've had some a good amount of funding from grants, I believe, to perform snook releases, and so they went to the level of putting in all these little devices in the creeks and estuaries, ranging really from Bradenton down to around Charlotte Harbor, which is a pretty big expanse on the Gulf Coast of Florida. And so they would raise these snook. They would put these, it's called pit tags, in a certain percentage of the snook, release them, and then the pit tags, as those snook go by the devices that they have set up throughout those estuaries, it'll ping it, right? It'll log that specific fish was at that specific location at a specific time. They know exactly when they release the fish and the conditions during the release, so that they can see real-time data on what these fish are doing. And so we saw that, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. And obviously, this stuff doesn't happen for free, right? This requires a lot of money to do this. They have like legit scientists performing this, and they just get some volunteers just for like the manual labor when we actually do the releases. As Cameron saw, it's pretty fun. Like, it's actually really fun to release thousands of fish, and knowing that they're going to be providing many more babies and many fun times for families across the Southwest. But yeah, it really started with that release. We were like, wow, this is awesome. And we were really, okay, like this is something good to do, right? If we're able to do something with Moat in this capacity, like we'll do it. And then shortly after that, we hit 30,000 members. So, Salt Strong, we're an online fishing club, and we hit 30,000 members, which is awesome, right? Like I remember, like when we first started, it's like, man, if we just can get to like 2,000, this would be crazy. And this has been it's been a crazy growth. We're just blessed with having just a bunch of great members. And so we hit 30,000 members. We're like, hey, like this would be fun to do a celebration for 30,000 members to host and fund 30,000 redfish release. So that's really how it started. And turns out we didn't even know this type of release has never been done for redfish anywhere in the world. So this type of data just isn't available. In the past, there'd be big releases, but they raise the fish to like usually under 6 inches and release them in mass quantities. And there's really no way to know how they did, except for like if you go to boat ramps, there'll be like a marine biologist at the ramp, and if somebody is keeping a redfish, they'll ask the fisherman's permission to get a little sample, and with that sample, they'll be able to tie it to a test. So you don't really know like what happened with those redfish until a certain percentage of the anglers actually turn it in, because there's not like a tag that's visible. It has to be a scientist that plucks like a little somewhere in the fish, and so this is different, right? The one we did actually has those tags, so it's lifetime, and those tags are active for life, and we'll be able to see real time data on where what happens with those fish. So pretty cool. So yeah, that's essentially the backstory, and it turned out we had a lot of volunteers come in. Like Cameron had even some YouTubers and like news crews come down. It was really, really cool. We were just doing it to do it, and it was cool to see how much publicity it actually got down in Southwest Florida.
Yeah, I saw several of the videos. I watched some of the news programs because, again, being where I am, I wasn't able to participate, I was really disappointed. It would have been awesome to do that. But Cameron, so from your perspective, so you were there when you were in there working. So yes, I know it was fun, as Luke said. It looked like it was fun, but there was a lot of work getting done as well. I saw one of the YouTubers that was there that you invited down, and man, do you want to go through just a little bit of the process when you're in the building? There's so many things that have to happen for this to go off correctly. What was it like when you showed up the one morning and they said, "Okay, let's get started for the day"?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it was a great time. It was just really awesome to see all those juvenile redfish. It probably set a new PR in terms of amount of redfish caught in a day. Basically, what it looks like is a bunch of those really big kind of tanks that you see on the TV, maybe about 12 feet wide, just a big circle, and you can't even see the bottom. It's a white tank, but the entire bottom just looks black because it's covered in redfish. So we have all the reds down there, and basically what they have is, I'd say probably about 6-7 tanks. And for each release day, we would take them out of a specific tank. But then there's one tank that has the fish with the actual, pit tag embedded in them. So we would take a sample out of that every day. I think it was around 10%. And then mix those fish in with the overall cohort from another tank, and just kind of transfer them into, individual tanks that were on the back of a truck. And then at that point, we'd bring them out to the release site, make sure we're monitoring the O2 levels, all that kind of stuff on the way, and then actually release them. And all the redfish got there one Lowe's bucket at a time. So yeah. 30,000 redfish in a small Lowe's bucket, just many, many, many trips. So it was a lot of work, but it was just really rewarding to see all those redfish swim off. I mean, at some points we had local fishermen going by and thanking us for putting these fish back in the water. So it was just really cool to actually be able to see them swim out of the bucket and, back into the ecosystem. And it was just, awesome. And it made all that work worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it definitely looked like a lot of work. And they were even taking, I guess, the ones that were tagged, I'm assuming, and they were doing the measurements before they let them out. And they were, I mean, I was amazed at just how much detail and double checking went into the pre-release because they were documenting every single fish by hand. It was being measured, passed off, and then put in the tank to go. And then Cameron, I have to say, I did notice that some of the guys were like, oh my gosh, they were down in the water and they were slipping on the mud. You didn't have the conveyor belts or the chutes that they just kind of put the fish on and they shoot them down in the water. So it was a manual release of all of these fish.
Yeah, no, I will say some crocs went down in the making of this release. One of our guys did lose both of his crocs in the deep mud. We were probably knee deep at one point, and I'm in there just passing off the buckets, and at one point I feel all these little redfish swimming between my legs while I'm like stuck in this mud. I'm like, man, I hope that's the redfish right now, because we're like in this swamp. It could be anything, moccasins, like other small fish, little sharks. I mean, I was just like, all right, I'm going to close my eyes and just hope this is the little redfish we released. So that was kind of funny, just watching them swim through and, hoping that's because we were deep in the mud out there.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun, though. The one thing I did notice is it was a lot of work and everyone was smiling the entire time. The one video I saw, I forget who it was just kind of emptied the bucket, let the fish swim out, and they're just passing. It's just a bucket line, right? Just a bucket line. And every time they stood back up, there was a smile on their face, and how cool to do that 30,000 times over the course of how many days? How many days did it go, or how many releases were there?
So I want to say over the course of, what was it, 3 weeks, Luke? There was 3 releases each week, so about 9 releases, and some were different sizes. I think that first day we released close to 3,000, and then some of them were smaller habitats, so we had to release less fish. So it was like 1,800 some days over 3,000. So we were releasing different quantities depending on kind of what the carrying capacity was for that specific ecosystem we were letting them go in.
That's cool. What were the size of the fish? Were they all consistently in a certain size range?
It was surprisingly different. Like they were, I think the smallest one, there were some runts that I saw in there when netting toward the end. They're quick. There's little small ones, and they were dodging the nets better than the bigger ones. But I think the smallest one was probably 4.5, 5 inches. But a lot of them were pushing like the 8, 9-ish, plus or minus. Is that right, Cameron? Or maybe not 8, maybe 7, 8.
Yeah, I want to say out of all the tagged ones that we measured, when I had talked to Ryan, who was kind of the head researcher for this particular project, he had said they came in, I think the smallest one was just under 5 inches, and then the biggest one was pushing double digits. I think he was close to 10, 11 in terms of, so there's a surprising amount of size variance. I think they said that these ones grew a lot quicker, so maybe this is a super group of future bull reds out there.
Well, could be. It'll be interesting to see how far they go. Now, these tags, are any of them visible?
None are visible. Yeah, they're the ones that the pit tags are internal, and okay. And so those are all like looking at the fish, you'd have no idea it's tagged.
Which is great, because there's always the question, especially, I forget the name of the tag, the loops. There's always a question: can the loop get caught on something, especially with a structure oriented species? And when I do tagging, I just use the straight tag so that it won't get caught. But I still get a little nervous sometimes, because some of the fish that I'm fishing for literally live in structure, like a tog, as an example. So that's cool. But so let's say, hypothetically, that one gets caught in Virginia. Is there any way that a fisherman would know that it had the tag, or is it tagged up near the head, or do you know where the tags are?
The pit tag's in the belly. And again, same as before, where if it's in Florida, it'd be FWC, but if there is a researcher, they would take a sample, and then that sample would, I would assume, would eventually get back down to Florida. But yeah, just based on visibility, there'd be no way to see. If they actually see the pit tag, I don't remember if there's anything. I assume the pit tag probably has some markings. So if somebody's cleaning the fish and saw the pit tag, that would be a clue as well. I can't remember exactly what it said on there.
That's pretty neat. So what we really need is more stations set up all throughout the South, and then start moving across the Gulf and up the East Coast, because I think that that right there, you had mentioned at the beginning, it can impact a lot of different areas. But, for example, up in New Jersey, we get bull redfish up here. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from Florida? Are they in the North Carolina range and they're coming up? It would be really interesting. And this type of research is, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, it's insane. And I love the fact that it's a lifetime tag.
Yeah.
There's some big striped bass tagging programs where I think it's Gray's Research does with the satellite tags, but they don't last, and they're these big, huge, bulky tags sticking off the back. Now they're putting them, for full disclosure, typically on 50-pound fish, which are not going to get snagged on anything, right? That it doesn't matter. They can go up and they get caught on a rock and they'll just pull it right out and it'll just come to the surface. But man, that's awesome. So you said that they're going to ping every time they go by one of these stations. When do you expect, or I don't know, are they going to start communicating? Is Salt Strong going to get any indication of what they're starting to see from them?
Yeah, we'll hear back. I mean, they'll be able to. They basically have these different stations, and it's all it's solar, solar powered, and so they have to just go to the station, upload the data, and when they do that, they'll know exactly what happened, for the last week or two, whatever, since they've been there, and again, they'll be able to see what exactly which fish swam by that zone, which is again pretty awesome, and it could be out there doing that for next 10 years. That tag will be active for as long as that fish is alive. And a question did come up multiple times. Hey, like, what happens if a shark or something eats one of them? Right? Obviously, that there is predation, so it would be silly to think that there wouldn't be. And if that does happen, it'll be in the shark's belly for like 2 days or whatever, or a big snook or something. It'll be in the big fish for a couple of days, and it'll just pass right through. They're really small tags. It's like a small Tylenol capsule. It's like a really small thing. So anything big enough to eat one of these fish with a tag in it, it'll just pass right through, and then won't ping anymore. But yeah, really, really cool to see. I can't wait to see the data. And I was thinking about your intro when you mentioned that they would release the trout, and there'd be fishermen catching those trout. Like, I would have been like depressed if I saw like that we put all this time and energy releasing these fish, then there's fishermen catching them right there. Like, fortunately, these are small redfish. These are smaller than the size that fishermen typically target. But also, we didn't like make any big publications that we were doing this, right? These were all released kind of inconspicuously, so that some just truthful data can come out where we can actually know what happened. But yeah, that would be a shame for those fish to be plucked away.
Yeah,
right at the beginning.
Well, it's a different purpose, right? So Moat is doing this, and Salt Strong's doing this for the research component and conservation. I mean, it introduces 30,000 fish back into the waters for breeding and spawning and all of that. So that's amazing. Now, up in Pennsylvania, as an example, they stock the trout for one reason. It's for the fishermen to catch them, right? So they actually stock, exotics in there as well. So you'll see the palominas and so on, the albino trout, and they stock trophies as well as a whole bunch of all legal size to keep. So the people that don't know how to fish stand there with a worm on the hook and just, they're hatchery bred. So hatchery bred fish are extremely aggressive because that's the only way that you survive in a hatchery. You have to get on that food first. So yeah, so it's crazy. It's actually very entertaining to watch these guys. Yeah,
because at that point in their lives, there's no natural predators. There's no such thing as a predator. So they're fearless. But it was cool to see these redfish, even though they basically have the big breeder heads in there, and they literally bred the fish from nothing to the point we released them. And it was cool to see them grow. Like, they started out looked like little minnows, and they eventually started getting bigger, and toward the end they finally got their dot on the tail. But it was cool to see, even though these fish technically have no natural predators, they were instinctively schooling up together. Like, when we were going to scoop them out of the net, they were obviously trying to dodge the net. They knew something's different. Like, let's get away from this. And then when we got down to the end, I was one of the few that got into the tank because they're quick. Like, these tanks are big, and so even in packs of 12 or more, like, they'd be in their little huddle, all swimming around together. So it was really cool to see. Even though, like, obviously you can't teach the fish that, it was just naturally ingrained to school up and to swim away from something that they don't know or that's bigger than them. So that was pretty neat to see that just happen. And supposedly, like, the biggest risk of predation is really the first 5 weeks from the science. It sounds like if they can just last 5 weeks and figure out birds, figure out sharks, figure out snook and other bigger fish that will gladly eat them. If they can just navigate that for 5 weeks, their survival rate just skyrockets. So
Wow.
so it's hopefully these little guys are still out there swimming around and dodging the risks.
I'm cheering for them. I'm rooting them on. Is there any way to know or to get an estimate, or did they have an estimate on what the mortality rate would be in the first 5 weeks?
There's no way to know because it's really never been done, and obviously
Right.
not every fish gets pinged as well. So they have to go through a specific area, and sometimes they go out and don't come back, and that's great, that's fine, and they'll eventually come back on those little samples from the FWC officers. But yeah, so there's right now we don't know, it's so early. We'll get around the data hopefully soon from Mo just to kind of see some general stats, but we really won't know anything totally congruent, concrete for like a year. So it needs to go on for
Right.
a long time.
Right. Well,
Sure.
I can't wait to see what it looks like. I think we should name some of the fish and keep track of them. So Cameron, you were mucking around in many releases. So maybe you get the first pick of the first one that sends a message or a signal back, and we'll just name it the canner. And maybe Luke, yours can be the Otis. Otis 2.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting though. Like Luke was just talking about, we have the kind of those beacons that'll pick up, as the fish are exiting the creek system. So basically, it one portion of, it's kind of like this little backwater estuary. So right at the front, they usually have something that'll pick them up as they leave, and then something usually a bit further back if they go further back into there. And he was saying, with the snook, after about 5 weeks, that's how long it takes to, kind of acclimate and become a natural fish in the environment. But with redfish, they could kind of assume it would be a similar, kind of adaptation period. But snook are kind of residents. Like you'll see the same snook kind of patrolling a set of dock lights every night, for example. While redfish, they were saying, are a little bit more transitory, moving around, and then usually the snook will come back to that release site, but they weren't sure if the redfish will. And I think what kind of stood out to me was actually on the ground, the diversity among the release sites. They could assume and maybe kind of estimate which one would be the most successful, but in some we were like really off the beaten path. We were way back there, had to take a 4-wheel drive truck a couple miles back into these tiny creeks that are only about 5 feet wide and release them there. And then some of them we were kind of in a residential canal or on the side of, like a mobile home park down in Englewood, somewhere over there. And, it's kind of interesting because they had their assumptions about which ones would have the best survivability, but there really is no actual data. Like Luke mentioned, there's nothing that says, hey, on a low tide in a back creek kind of area or in a residential canal where it's deeper, it's there wasn't really anything that had been done. So this is kind of going to be able to actually show which kind of site, what kind of conditions they're monitoring the oxygen levels. And they were talking about how there's kind of a sweet spot where, the larger fish aren't going back into the low oxygen level areas, but it has to be high enough to where the small kind of hatchery fish can survive. And when we were back in those areas, we saw a bunch of small snapper, a bunch of small sheep's head, mainly all small fish. You didn't see those larger predators because the oxygen levels weren't high enough. So it was kind of interesting to learn about some of that science and those sweet spots too. And it should be really interesting to actually see how many of those spots are the best in terms of survival. And then that way it can, feed all the releases they do from Texas to North Carolina to the ones we do here in Florida. I mean, we'll share all those findings, and from there, they'll be able to actually use that and deploy it when they do their own releases. So it'll be really cool to actually find out what that looks like.
That's really cool. I mean, Salt Strong's right at the beginning. I don't know if they would have done a redfish release if Salt Strong didn't say, hey, we want to do redfish or not. But man, so everything, this first release of these redfish, it's going to inform all the future ones. And I guess we can assume it'll just get better based on what you said, Cameron. I mean, they'll know after a year, or at least they'll have I would think, a directional indication as to, all right, well, let's go more with the 5-foot creeks and less with the canals, or let's skip these creeks. We're too far back. We need a little bit more oxygen, and we've got, it looks like 20% of the tags from this area are pinging consistently. Or we saw that within the first week, they all moved to 10 feet of water. They all moved out of the creek. So what we want to do is make sure that we have 10 feet of water within X distance from wherever the release points are. I think it's amazing. This is the kind of stuff that gets me really excited. I mean, the conservation part of it is just amazing. The potential that this has for data. I mean, it could literally change the fishery in multiple states for the entire species. So I think it's great. And I think Salt Strong, we need to talk more about the conservation,
Yep.
the conservation efforts, and not even just Salt Strong, but the members, everything that's going on, because I don't think that people are as aware of the impact that the members have on conservation throughout the entire United States. And, that's one thing. Luke, anything you want to bring up about that? I mean, there's a lot that goes on, and it's just not publicized. It's not why it's being done. It's not being done to publicize, but I think it's something worth mentioning.
Yeah. I mean, overall, the only way for us to make sure that our estuaries and waterways are clean is to have as many people as possible that love and respect the waterways. So our goal with Salt Strong is really just to help anglers catch more fish more easily, which is going to increase odds they're going to do it more and really enjoy and respect it. So that's really our focus. That's what we do outward. The conservation stuff is, we don't promote it. It's more on the back end. It's just what members do. And so, like, for example, we started up chapters. It was about 3 months ago. It's now regional groups. These are subsets of members who meet up, and part of their overall function and this format is to talk about local conservation efforts. And so that way we can have the local, because every region is different. Some areas need to protect seagrass, some areas need to protect oysters, some have just unfortunate chemicals going through. So the conservation stuff is usually done best at a regional level with support from a bigger group. And so that's basically what we're setting up. And so one example of conservation that just people don't know about, I even had a friend of mine who I met through Salt Strong, has been a member for like 3 or 4 years. And he was talking about, hey, like, man, we need to do more, with now that we're getting bigger, now we're over 40,000 members versus 30 just not even a year ago. He's like, hey, we need to do some more give back. And he even mentioned fish releases and cleanups. And he didn't realize that we were doing these because we weren't, I guess kind of shame on us. We weren't really promoting it, but we're just doing it. And I was like, hey, you do realize like we just funded an entire redfish leaf of 30,000 redfish, like right in your area. And he didn't even know. And even same thing, like there was actually the Tampa chapter set up and ran all by themselves a cleanup of a park in Ruskin, Florida on Tampa Bay. And I went to it, and there's like 30 people showed up and picked up a ton of trash, and they just had fun, right? It's just anglers. The core thing is anglers helping anglers. And here it's just, members going out on their own time, setting up. The trash bags were there. They had waters, they had snacks, and just everybody had fun. And we cleaned up a ton of trash. And again, we didn't promote it, but that's just, to me, that's just what people do who love and respect the fisheries. So what we promote is just getting out, having fun on the waterways, and the conservation, in my opinion at least, is just it's a lagging indicator, right? If you have a ton of people loving water and more engagement in our post, the lagging indicator is that, okay, they're going to be the ones that are going to be saving our waterways. So unfortunately, a conservation event, if we send an email about it, like, it's not really, it's not like the crazy fun thing to watch. So we are usually sending out, helpful tips on fishing. But again, that the reason why is so that it's really, that's the front end. Okay. We have to get members and those who are not yet members, but might be, we need to help them out. We need to help them catch more fish more easily, knowing that as soon as they do, they're going to like the fishery more. They're going to want to protect it more. And they're eventually going to start participating in the meetups, and whether it's ours or somebody else's, that, it doesn't matter to us, as long as long as we're all just helping clean the environment, everybody wins.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my favorite pictures to see is somebody who comes back and they don't post the sunset if they don't have a good day on the water. They post the net full of trash that they were picking up as they were going around. And, it's something that a lot of people do. Whenever I pull in with, I fish from a kayak. If you look at the back, you'd think that I'm not a light, small guy, but you'd think that I was just eating all day, eating and drinking, because I just have so much trash, and I just take the net and I flip it over my shoulder, and it dumps on the crate and in the back of the kayak. And but I see a lot of kayakers doing that. I see a lot of boats doing that too. And I'll tell you what, as a child of the 80s, you did not see it back then. You would be fishing out in the fleet and you would just see trash just going by. So it's getting better. And I think the attitudes are changing. And you mentioned the cleanup. I know there's another one coming up this week that one of the chapters is doing too. So
yeah, over on the East Coast. Yeah. And there's probably others too. There's a lot of smaller ones, but these are the ones that are getting, 20, 30 plus people out. And, even if it's 5 people, that can make a big difference. Even just one person, like I'll launch a paddleboard somewhere, and it's just sad how much trash is in a lot of areas, especially if it's like a public ramp or somewhere where there's a lot of people go. And I usually have like one of those Publix bags, or a 5-gallon bucket, and kind of the mission. Okay, if I'm out here, might as well just take 5-10 minutes to pick up trash. And it's shocking how much trash can be picked up and how much of an impact just one person can have. And if you get 10 people out, even bigger. And once you get to 20, 30, like we literally cleaned almost the whole park. And fortunately, it was a relatively clean park, so we were able to get through it pretty quick. But yeah, it's just shocking how just a little bit of effort can go a long way. And then again, if just more people would do it, our fisheries will stay nice and hopefully even get better over the years.
I agree. And that may be the best point to leave this at, but we have to reach out to Cameron one more time. Your first podcast. Anything you want to add before we go on this one?
Yeah, I think so. I was in the Tampa chapter meeting, and a lot of people were asking me about it right after the release. And I know a common question is there going to be anything crunchy in the redfish fillets? So there's not going to be any tags in there. The way the researchers explained it to me, they were embedded kind of in a stomach cavity. So unless you're eating that, you don't have to worry about it. So you should be good there. And I think something that was just really interesting about that and the fact that these tags aren't visible is this is going to be the cleanest data possible, because people are going to treat these just like the average normal redfish they catch. If you get one with one of those big yellow tags hanging off of it, chances are you won't keep it out as long for a picture, or you're less likely to take it home and harvest that fish. But with this, it's going to be treated exactly how a normal redfish would be treated. That way, it's the cleanest data. We'll be able to actually get real results on it. So that was something I thought was actually just really interesting, and something I know a lot of members were wondering about. So no, you don't have to worry about the tags in your food. And I think they even passed it with some government agency to make sure it was all good on that front. So don't worry about that. But I thought that was funny, and then just also interesting from a scientific standpoint that this is like going to totally blend in with the sample population of redfish, unless you have one of those scanners.
Yeah, I wish I had one of the scanners. It's almost that they should put them at the fish cleaning stations at the most popular launches, so they'll see which ones are harvested. Not that would be a great investment in the technology, but it would be pretty cool to see just how many are being harvested. But listen, I want to thank both of you for coming on. What an amazing program to be a part of. 30,000 redfish are now cruising the waters of Florida. Man, I can't wait to see. You've got years of data coming, and it's just going to inform the future releases. So that's awesome. I love this story. Thank you both for coming on. Really appreciate it. Everybody, till next time, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was